I first noticed it doing accounting. Not history, not conspiracy research. Accounting. I was trying to reconcile quarterly figures across 3 fiscal years, and I kept hitting the same wall. The months don't align. January has 31 days, February has 28 or 29, April has 30. Every quarter is a different length. Every year the numbers shift slightly. Every comparison requires adjustment. I asked a colleague why calendars were designed this way. He laughed, said nobody designed it, it just evolved. That answer bothered me for years, because calendars don't evolve. Calendars are built. Someone sat down and made decisions about how to divide time, and the decisions they made are, when you look at them clearly, mathematically indefensible. 28 days, 30 days, 31 days, 28 days again. No pattern, no logic, no correspondence with anything in nature. There is something wrong with our calendar. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it structurally, mathematically, demonstrably. And the deeper I went, the more I suspected the wrongness wasn't accidental. Once you see the pattern, or rather the deliberate absence of one, you can't unsee it. Let me give you the mathematics plainly. A year contains 365 days. Divide that by 12 and you get 30.4 days per month. That is the rational number, the one a mathematician would use. Instead, the Gregorian calendar gives you January 31, February 28, March 31, April 30, May 31, June 30, July 31, August 31, September 30, October 31, November 30, December 31. There is no mathematical principle behind that sequence, no astronomical necessity, no biological correspondence. It is arbitrary, deliberately, chaotically arbitrary. July is named for Julius Caesar. August for Augustus, who had a day stolen from February so that his month would be as long as Caesar's. The measurement of time became a political instrument at the exact moment it was taken from the natural world and handed to the state. The result is a system where no 2 consecutive months are the same length. No quarter contains the same number of days. A monthly salary is not monthly. It varies by days worked. We are living in a broken clock, one that keeps approximate time but cannot be used for precision without constant correction and constant dependence on someone else to do the correcting. That is not a flaw, that is a design. Here is the part that stopped me completely. The human menstrual cycle averages 28 days, 13 cycles per solar year. This is not mythology, this is not metaphor, this is biology, one of the oldest clocks in nature, older than any civilization, older than any king who ever decided how many days belonged in a month. The human body was already synchronized to this rhythm before we had words for it. And the moon, the synodic lunar cycle, the time for the moon to return to the same phase, is 29.5 days. The sidereal cycle, the moon's true orbit against the fixed stars, is 27.3 days. The 28-day month sits almost exactly between these two measurements. It is the averaging of the moon's own rhythm, as if someone looked at the sky and looked at the body and recognized they were speaking the same language and built the calendar from that correspondence. 13 months, 28 days each. 13 times 28 equals 364. Exactly 52 weeks. Exactly 4 perfect 7-day cycles per month. Every month identical. Every year. Add 1 day outside the monthly count, a transitional day, a day that dozens of ancient traditions specifically marked as sacred, and you have 365. A solar year. Perfect. Whole. Repeating. This is the calendar the body already runs on. The calendar the sky already runs on. The one we replaced with Julius and Augustus and a knuckle trick children use to remember which months have 31 days. At Stonehenge, there are 56 pits arranged in a perfect circle. They are called the Aubrey holes. 56. 2 cycles of 28. Researchers have proposed for decades that these pits track the lunar cycle in precisely the way a 13-month calendar requires. The official archaeological literature calls this one possible interpretation among many. I will ask the question the official literature does not ask. If you dig 56 pits in a perfect circle at the cost of years of coordinated human labor, and 56 is 2 times 28, and 28 is the length of the lunar cycle, and 13 lunar cycles fit in a solar year, what are the odds that the number 56 is a coincidence? Now here is what I could not shake. The Maya built the same structure. The ancient Egyptians built the same structure. The Lakota, cultures across West Africa, civilizations separated by oceans, by millennia, by every conceivable barrier, all arrived at the same answer. 13 months, 28 days. The Maya long count, the most precisely engineered timekeeping system ever constructed by a pre-industrial civilization, is built around continuous cycles of 13. The Egyptian civil calendar ran 12 months of 30 days, plus 5 days outside the regular count, days considered sacred, days that belonged to no month. Sound familiar? 3 civilizations, no contact, different millennia, different geographies, different languages, the same underlying structure. This is not coincidence. This is not parallel evolution by chance. This is the pattern of a shared inheritance, something older than any of these cultures' recorded histories, embedded in the practice of watching the sky before writing existed to preserve the reasoning. And then, at a documentable moment in history, it started to disappear. Think about what it actually means to lose 10 days. October 4th, 1582. A priest in a village in Spain goes to sleep. He wakes up, it is October 15th. 10 days of his life, 10 days of rent owed, of debts calculated, of wages earned, of births and deaths recorded, simply do not exist in the legal record. He has to explain this to his congregation. He has to explain why the calendar they've used their entire lives, that their parents used, that their grandparents used, is now wrong. Not gradually adjusted, not corrected over time, wrong, overnight, by papal decree. How do you explain that? You frame it as correction, modernization, the replacement of superstition with science, the replacement of the body and the moon with the clock and the state. And this is what I keep returning to. The administrators who carried out these transitions appear in the historical record as people who understood neither the full logic of the system they were abandoning nor the full implications of the system they were adopting. They were following instructions they didn't fully understand. The decision had been made at a level they couldn't access. Their job was only execution. This is how the suppression worked. Not through armies, not through obvious violence, through paperwork, through decree, through the overnight disappearance of days that real people had actually lived. When Rome imposed the Julian calendar on conquered territories before that, the Druids who maintained the Celtic lunar calendar were targeted, their traditions criminalized, their oral knowledge deliberately disrupted. Not because the Roman calendar was more accurate, because a conquered people on their own time is a people that hasn't fully surrendered. The silence was deafening. And it wasn't finished, because as recently as 90 years ago, someone tried to fix it. And what happened to that attempt is the part of this story I couldn't stop pulling on. In 1902, a British statistician named Moses Cotsworth published a meticulous analysis of calendar reform. 13 months, 28 days each, every month identical, every quarter exactly 91 days, every year beginning on the same day of the week. He named the 13th month Sol, placed between June and July, at the height of summer light. Cotsworth was not a mystic, he was not a crank, he was a man with a spreadsheet and a problem to solve, and the solution he found was the same one the Maya and the Egyptians and the Druids had found before him. He wasn't alone. George Eastman, founder of Kodak, one of the most powerful industrialists in American history, adopted the International Fixed Calendar for his company in 1928, not as an experiment, as standard operating procedure. Payroll, accounting, production schedules, quarterly reports, all of it on 13 equal months of 28 days. The results were documented and published. Administrative costs dropped measurably. Accounting reconciliation time decreased. Production planning became more consistent. Managers reported scheduling across departments became significantly simpler. Eastman testified before government committees. He lobbied. He funded public campaigns. He became the loudest institutional voice for global calendar reform in the early 20th century. Kodak ran on the 13-month calendar for 61 years. Here is what keeps me awake at night. The data exists. The results exist. The institutional memory exists. A major corporation with tens of thousands of employees demonstrated for 6 decades that equal months produce better outcomes. And almost nobody knows this. Kodak did not abandon the calendar because it failed. It abandoned it in 1989, 57 years after Eastman's death, because the friction of operating on a different system from every external partner had become too costly to maintain. The 13-month calendar wasn't defeated by a superior argument, it was worn down by a world that refused to change around it. George Eastman died on March 14, 1932. He left a note. 4 words. "My work is done." Then he shot himself. He had spent the final decade of his life lobbying governments, funding campaigns, testifying before committees, pushing for the calendar reform that he believed, based on 61 years of data from his own company, would make human life measurably better. He died the same year the League of Nations reform effectively died. Whether he knew it was over, I don't know. What I know is that the most powerful institutional advocate for rational time died in the same window that the last serious chance for rational time was quietly closed. The League of Nations convened a committee for calendar reform in 1923. They received hundreds of proposals from governments, from businesses, from religious institutions, from ordinary people around the world. The Cotsworth Plan emerged as the leading proposal. Multiple governments indicated support. International trade organizations backed it. Eastman lobbied hard. By the late 1920s, the momentum was real. This was not fringe. This was not marginal. This was the primary international governing body of its era, seriously considering replacing the Gregorian calendar. And then it stopped. Not through a formal vote, not dismantled by a superior argument, not replaced by something better. It simply stopped. The committees dissolved, the correspondence thinned, the momentum dissipated. By the mid-1930s, the conversation was effectively dead. I read the official account, and then I read the archive directly. The League of Nations correspondence from 1930 to 1932 is incomplete. Letters referenced in other letters that do not appear in the files. Meeting minutes that summarize discussions without recording their content. The Cotsworth papers at the University of Toronto contain significant gaps clustered around the years of peak lobbying, the years when the debate was closest to resolution. Not water damage, not cataloging error, gaps that appear on inspection to be deliberate. These gaps are deliberate. Something was decided that someone didn't want documented. The comfortable explanation for why the reform failed is inertia, religious objection, nationalist disagreement. I want to ask a different question. Who specifically benefits from irregular months? A mortgage due on the first of every month sounds like a regular payment. It is not. In January, you have 31 days of interest accruing before the next payment. In February, 28. The difference across millions of mortgages is not trivial. Banks have always known this. The variation in month length is not a bug in their accounting. It is a feature. Quarterly earnings reports cover periods of different lengths. Q1, 90 days. Q2, 91 days. Q3, 92 days. Comparing them requires adjustment. Adjustment requires expertise. Expertise requires specialists. Specialists charge fees. The entire industry of financial calendar reconciliation, accountants, actuaries, compliance officers whose job is to adjust for irregularity, exists because the calendar is irregular. In a 13-month equal calendar, most of this work disappears. Every quarter, 91 days. Every month, 28 days. Comparison requires no adjustment, no specialist, no fee, no intermediary. The Cotsworth Plan was estimated in 1920s economic analysis to save the global business community hundreds of millions annually in administrative overhead alone. That is money that currently flows to intermediaries, to institutions, to the apparatus of calendar-based complexity. The Bank for International Settlements was founded in 1930. The League of Nations calendar reform died in the same years. I am not claiming direct causation. I am noting that the institutions which most benefit from irregular time consolidated their power in exactly the same window that the last serious challenge to irregular time was quietly extinguished. Patterns are not proof, but patterns are also not accidents. I want to ask something that is not usually asked in calendar history. What would it feel like to know time the way you know hunger? Not to calculate it, not to check it, to feel it the way animals feel the season turning before a single leaf has fallen. There are indigenous communities that maintained the 28-day count into the modern era. Ethnographers who spent time among them noted something difficult to quantify, a different relationship to urgency, to waiting, to the present moment, as if time were something you lived inside rather than something chasing you from behind. We dismissed that as primitivism. There is emerging research in chronobiology, the science of biological time, suggesting that human health, cognitive function, and emotional regulation are deeply affected by alignment or misalignment with natural cycles. What if the calendar reform wasn't only about administrative efficiency? What if something else was being argued for, and quietly argued against? We are living in a broken clock. Not broken in the sense that it fails to keep time. Broken in the sense that its irregularity is structural, built to keep anyone who needs precision permanently dependent on the institutions that manage the complexity the irregularity creates. The knowledge was not destroyed. Destruction leaves evidence, leaves ash, leaves the memory of fire. It was displaced, quietly, incrementally, replaced with something just functional enough that nobody screamed, just workable enough that the loss went unnoticed for generations. We didn't mourn the 13 months because we were never told they existed. We didn't miss the rhythm because we were born already out of step. Handed a broken clock and told it was the only clock there ever was. The mathematics of 13 times 28 has never been refuted, only ignored. The Kodak data still exists. The missing pages of the League of Nations archive are still missing. The Aubrey holes at Stonehenge still number 56. The evidence hasn't gone anywhere. It has just never been organized into a question we are supposed to ask. What else have we been handed and never thought to question? The Cotsworth Plan is documented. The Kodak records exist. The League of Nations archive gap is real and measurable. The mathematics of 13 times 28 has never been refuted, only ignored. Next time you look at a calendar, count the days in each month. Ask yourself who decided they should be different. Ask yourself who benefits from the answer being complicated. The next video goes further into the older systems, the ones that ran on 13, and what happened to the cultures that tried to keep them. If this opened something you can't close, you know what to do.